Okay. The reading from Emmett Fox is called The Dual Law of Thought. Every thought is made up of two factors, knowledge and feeling. A thought consists of a piece of knowledge with a charge of feeling, and it is the feeling alone that gives power to the thought. No matter how important or magnificent the knowledge content may be, if there is no feeling attached to it, nothing will happen. On the other hand, no matter how unimportant or insignificant the knowledge content may be, if there's a large charge of feeling, something will happen. It makes no difference whether the knowledge content is correct or not, as long as you believe it is correct. Remember that it is what we really believe that matters. A report about something may be quite untrue, but if you believe it, it has the same effect upon you as if it were true. And that effect again will depend upon the quantity of feeling attached to it. When we understand this law, we see the importance of accepting the truth with joy in every phase of our experience. And from Psalm 16, verse 11, "Thou wilt show me the path of life. In thy presence is fullness of joy."
And the Lamsa translation of the same is, "Thou wilt show me the path of life, and I shall be filled with the joy of thy countenance." So again, slight difference. Well, today, folks, I'm going to be talking, well, the title is Ugly Bags of Mostly Water. And if you are Star Trek fans, you'll remember one version, I'm not even sure which Star Trek it was, where a different life form thinks very little of our appearance or what we are. But I'm going to quote several different approaches to us as physical bodies. A movie critic talking about the new Will Ferrell documentary wrote, "We are all bags of wet dirt that need to stop taking our differences so seriously. We can live together and respect each other." There was another Star Trek where a Klingon died, and the people aboard the starship asked of the Klingon hierarchy how they should handle the remains of this dead Klingon. And the answer was, "Dispose of it as you wish, it is but a hollow shell." And Emmett Fox sort of agrees with the Klingons. What I'm doing today, and this was long before we heard of the death, but it felt like it was time to talk about our progression as spiritual energy beings and how it relates to this body. And that's what we're going to look at today. So Emmett Fox states, "There's nothing sacred about a dead body. It is a worn-out garment," he says, "and should be disposed of as cleanly and in as expeditious a manner as possible." He recommends cremation. He also recommends that the ashes should not be preserved because only a morbid satisfaction can come from keeping these gruesome relics. Neither, he says, should anyone erect a monument of any kind, because to erect a monument over a cast-off body is just as unreasonable as it would be for you to bury an old suit of clothes. So we're getting back to garments again, to the empty shell. So he talks about the relative lack of value of visiting a graveside or a monument for a graveside because the deceased isn't there. And he recommends instead honoring the memory of the person who has passed, who has transited. And by the way, it's the Ernest Holmes people who moved us from passed over to transitioned, or from dead to transitioned. And Fox clearly understood that too. In a previous reading for one of our Sundays, he spoke about how here is where our body is, but the spirit came in here, and when the body is done with us, or we're done with the body, we continue on. It's not that this is all there is, or that this is the ultimate of our spiritual existence. It is another part of it. And so memory can be cherished. When I do funerals, I often, assuming that the person who has passed was honored and loved, and unfortunately a lot of them are not, I talk about how you honor the person who affected your life and has now transitioned by carrying on the good that they had imparted to the world. That is honoring them, compared with Emmett Fox putting a granite monument over a set of dead clothes. Then there's always the question people have, why do some people have easier lives than others? And Fox says that much of what we experience in this life is the impact from who we chose to be in past incarnations. And that this was our experience, karma, if you will. Sister Pepper used to talk about that. I'll add a slight variant to that. Yes, we have those influences to deal with, but we can heal from them so we do not carry that through our lives. So those areas where you are experiencing struggle or life is not functioning the way it should, heal it. I'm reminded of a long dead friend of mine who was a hypnotherapist. And he told me the story of a man who would have these crushing pains in his chest, and physicians could not figure it out. Psychological counseling didn't do anything. And he told me, so he devised a test. The man had come to visit him for something. At that point, his office, you had to walk up several flights of stairs to get there on the outside. And so they did whatever they were going to do, and he waited until the man had walked down all the stairs to get to his car, and came out of the door and said, "Hey, John, come on back here." I don't know if his name was John, but we'll use it. "Come back here, quick." And the man ran up the stairs, and he wasn't breathless and he wasn't hurting. "What do you need?" And so they went back in and did life regression and came to a life where he had been a Roman centurion and he had killed several Christians without cause. And so he was punishing himself in this life. Oh, I forgot the other part. And when he realized what he had done, he threw himself on his own sword. So in this life, he was still punishing himself by feeling that sword run through him. So they did forgiveness through the hypnotherapy, and the man was fine thereafter. None of us is chained, no matter what Emmett Fox says. None of us needs to be chained to whatever our problems are in this life. Doesn't matter where they come from. You have wonderful things like hypnotherapy, like lift-on therapy, and emotion code for that matter, where you can identify and heal from whatever pasts, whether we're following ancestral pasts, whether we're following soul pasts, past soul lives, we can heal. That's one of the great gifts that the divine has allowed us, that we do not need to suffer. Now, many people choose to, or choose to feel helpless in the face of whatever they're dealing with. That's their choice, that's life. But you don't have to. When I was first diagnosed chronically mentally ill, I had the option of, oh gosh, I guess I'm just going to live a horrible life. To my credit, I said, God, I don't know what to do, but can you help me out here? And, well, you know who I am now. Crazy, but not as crazy. And I have a pretty good life. And I have a pretty good wife, too, who puts up with me. I'm very grateful. Now, I also give her credit. There's a lot of things I don't understand about human interaction that she has cued me in on. And I thank you for that. So, taking Fox for what it is, the law of karma, the law of tenfold return. Sister Pepper said the law of karma is the same as the law of tenfold return. You give out good, you get good. You give out bad, you're going to get bad. But we can forgive ourselves. We can heal ourselves. And we can offer healing to those who are hurting or those who have passed. To me, that's one of the wonderful things about Lifton therapy in particular, or Psyche for that matter, is that we can go into the past and heal people so we can heal backwards. Richard Rohr talks about that. He talks about the revelation to him that normally you pray forward, right? But he realized he could also pray backwards to heal those who had been hurt or were hurting in the past. Each of us can do that. Each of us in our own walk, our own spiritual walk, can allow our change, our improvement in energy to heal the past. Even when we discard this old garment, we're still here. In fact, it isn't Fox, but somebody else that I read, maybe it's the Native Americans, I can no longer remember, it's in here someplace, but I'm not going to worry about it, about how even when we left this ugly bag of water, we're still here, but we're at a different set of frequencies, sort of like parallel universes, if you're familiar with science fiction. So we can connect, we can cross-connect with those other frequencies. We can commune with those who are existing in this other frequency, what I call the shamanic world. And Laurie C., for instance, in her work, both doing readings and in her work as a Lifton therapist, often does connect with the other side and bring them into the healing fold. Don't limit yourself, your concepts, to just this. We are so much more. We are capable. We have access to so much more. And even with that, Fox and others say, even when we're on the other side, we're still not at Godhead. We still have the whole spiritual connection to grow into. And if we're panentheists, to grow into, but we're already in it, even now, if we allow it. Because in panentheism, God is in us, God is around us, we are of God. Or as one unity minister where my sister attends keeps reminding people, we're all God stuff. We're all God stuff. And the Peace Pilgrim, when she had her first revelations that led her on the path to become the Peace Pilgrim, and I've said this many times, so forgive me if you remember it already, but she was walking through the forest and she realized, oh, this tree is God, this rock is God, this dirt is God. Yes, every piece of this is God frequency. Every piece of this is God frequency. And thus we are all a unitary existence. Even though, if you look at the pictures here, it doesn't look that way. But we're all connected. And when we experience a loss of someone in this side, it's okay to miss them. It's okay to grieve. But in your spiritual side, remember also that they're still here. They're here in how they affected you. They're here in your memories. They're here even if they're in this other universe that we aren't quite so good at connecting to. And yet, for many of us, someone just wrote me, each of us is a microcosm of the temple. Hence, construction of the temple takes place within our own physical body, creating a place where the light of Creator can rest upon us. Yes, amen. The article I found talks about defining death. And it says, although they may be expressed and phrased or interpreted differently, it seems that many religious teachings share comparable insights to the concept of life after death. Fox says, when a person seems to die, all that happens is that he leaves his body here and goes over onto the next plane, otherwise unchanged. He falls asleep here to wake up on the other side, minus his physical body, which was probably more or less damaged, but enriched with the knowledge that he has not really died. And New Thought, as I mentioned earlier, changed from death to transition for that reason. And Sister Pepper, I remember, used to talk about the fact that when we go to the other side, we don't necessarily lose our personalities or our preferences, at least not immediately. She'd say, now, if I want to redo my kitchen, I would go ask Aunt Betty for some ideas, because Aunt Betty could make a beautiful dress out of feed sack. But if I was going to the track and wanted to win, I better not ask Aunt Betty, because she thought all gambling was sinful. But Grandfather Hal, on the other hand, he always helped me pick a winner, because he horse raced a lot. So it's important not to deny that we have had a loss, but it's also important in our spiritual understandings, in our spiritual walk, to understand that in another way we have not lost them. They're here, they're there. The number of people I've talked with who had near-death experience, it's not huge, but enough. Remember being on the other side and seeing all their friends and their pets waiting for them. Now, I've read a couple of people where they had a different experience. One of them was fundamentalist, and the concept of going to hell, thank God, was very real for them, and they experienced going to hell. And another friend of mine who doesn't really believe anything, when he was dead, he didn't see anything. He said it was just a blank until he woke back up when they brought him back to life. So from that standpoint, I suggest, given that God tends to like to give us what we request for our own life in transition, doesn't it make sense to assume and own something wonderful on the other side, rather than hellfire and damnation or nothing? Because you're placing the odds in favor of something better, something wonderful. And you don't want God giving you the other just because he thinks you asked for it, right? There was a part of the article here, Dr. Raymond Moody, Georgia physician who became interested in the afterlife, noted that all the people he interviewed expressed the thought that they're no longer afraid of death. It's no longer forbidding to them. They understood from their experience that it was just a transition. Some called it a homecoming, and others had other psychologically positive descriptions of it. For instance, graduating and escaping from jail. Okay, well, we could call this a jail. We are limited by this ugly bag of mostly water. But we don't have to claim limit. We can be as expansive as we possibly can. Why limit ourselves? And then Fox, going back to Fox again, talks about how we possess two bodies. The one is physical, the one that we see here, and the other one is etheric. And we cannot see it because the vibrations are so different, which means we're getting back into the, if you will, the dual universe. And as I was reading this, I was thinking recently, a friend of mine recovering from long COVID was experiencing substantial distress where her female organs are, and nothing seemed to be helping it. And I don't talk much about it, but I do shamanic healing. So I asked her to lie down on her sofa, and I took a look, and I could see that her shamanic organs, etheric organs, to use the other term, weren't inside her body. They were floating up above it. They had been displaced by this COVID problem or something. And so, using divine love, divine energy, I helped them go back into her body. She called me 2 days later to say her problem was gone. So, even in your walks, don't hesitate, given your spiritual sensitivity, or you wouldn't be here, to follow leadings to help others, even if it means stepping into the other side or connecting from the energy from the other side to help them here. This is all part and parcel of life and death, folks. Of life and other life, if you will. And then Fox says, and I'm going to read this directly, "You will go to the sort of place and be among the sort of people for whom you have prepared yourself by your habitual thinking and your mode of living while on this earth." How's that for a caution? Let me read it again. "You will go to the sort of place and be among the sort of people for whom you have prepared yourself by your habitual thinking and your mode of living while on this earth." Which we can translate to, are you busy lifting the place up? Are you hanging around with people who help lift the place up with their positive energy? Or are you hanging with people who, on the Hawkins scale, are on the downward slide? I remember in my own well-getting, one day I realized that people that I had been hanging around with on a weekly or multiple, every other day basis, I hadn't seen in 6 months. And I gave it some thought and realized they were all low, downward energy people that I'd been hanging with, and now I wasn't there anymore. It wasn't even conscious. And now I'm hanging with you guys. This is a real upper. Yay for all of us. So, what does this mean? We're not going to meet God. Our people who transitioned will not necessarily meet God in this other plane. We still have a lot of connection to do, but we still are of God, in God, serving God. It's still okay to say goodbye to the ugly bag of mostly water that we knew. It's, or the worn out clothes that we knew, if you will. I'm not saying don't grieve. We don't, if so, in the funerals I do, if the person has been suffering for a long time, there is such a sense of joy because now they've gone. For someone who's gone and no one's prepared, there's grief because they did not have a chance to say goodbye or to prepare for it, or they don't see the benefit of it, they only see the loss. which leads me, as I was reading this, I was realizing sometimes I think of our existence here as a balloon filled with helium gas. When we're young, it's wonderful and round and beautiful, but no matter how tight we tie the knot here, over the years, it shrinks and becomes more wrinkled and more wrinkled and flabbier and flabbier. And sooner or later, it's time to put it down. And that's where all of us are. May none of us end up being empty of helium for a long time yet. And yet that is our process. Let us enjoy what we have here, but do not overlook that we also exist in the etheric side as well. And we are of the divine. And the more we allow ourselves that connection and to grow here, the ever more wonderful side will be on when we go to the other side, to this other existence, this other universe, whatever you claim to call it. And that's what I had to say tonight. So, any thoughts? Anything? Yes, Lori Kay.
I'm reminded of a channeled being named Emmanuel back in the 80s, had a few books out. And Emmanuel said, "You have no idea how many of you leave your bodies and start laughing because it's like taking off a too tight pair of shoes." And I love that. There's only I don't know how to even talk about it, but what you remind me of is a kind of a shift that I'm experiencing in understanding that what needs to be focused on is the feeling. What needs to be focused on is the vibration. What needs to be focused on is the feeling of divinity and whatever that means to us. Because if we can't say, and I know I've said this before, but we can't say we are a spiritual being having a human experience and still only focus on the humanity and think that we're going to get where we're trying to go spiritually. We really have to start to practice aligning, not align every day, every minute, but practice this feeling into this truth you're talking about of we are that. We are that. And yet we are not the one who can go, I'm going to make this happen. Yeah, we're nowhere near that. But the longer we keep thinking, I need to focus on my physicality first, I think the more pain we have, the more discomfort, the more separation. So, oh, and by the way, there was a Star Trek episode where the team went to, in the original Star Trek, where they go down onto a planet and they keep hearing buzzing. And it turns out that it's other people who were just living at unbelievable speeds faster than them. So there you go.
Okay. Anybody else with a comment?
Lori C.
Yes, Lori C. Okay, and then Ellie will be next.
Yeah, I guess to sum up what you're saying that our thoughts heavily influence our reality. And it's interesting that you bring that up because I was thinking about that earlier today in terms of heart problems. I've known 3 people who've had either fatal or near fatal heart attacks. And all 3 of them, just before the heart attack, became very, very angry. They were just chronically angry. One woman was in a fight with her husband when she had the heart attack and died in the middle of the argument, leaving him feeling guilty, like he thought he killed her. And another person happened to call me the day before the heart attack and said something just really off the wall, crazy rude. And I thought, I didn't take it personally because I know better than that, but I thought, what's going on? And so I'm wondering if our ugly bags of mostly water, when we're having heart problems, there's a chemical change in us that makes us feel angry chronically. And the first person we see, it's like, you must be the cause of my anger. I'm mad at you. Because we do that. When we have chronic feelings, the first person we see, it's like, you have to be it. And so we say that as one sign of a heart attack is this gastrointestinal reflux. It isn't really reflux, it's the heart attack. One person described it to me as a kind of a radiating pain, like acid filling his lungs. And, you know, we can mistake that for reflux and fatigue and things like that. I'm wondering if chronic anger could also be a red flag for heart problems. And I'm not finding any evidence of that anywhere, but I'm wondering if that should be something to look out for.
Isn't that what all that type A, type B personality was all about? You know, anger causing.
Yeah, Mary is saying she's reminded of type A, type B. Type A heart attack is chronic pushing and anger.
Yeah.
It could be, but you know, I feel like there's a chemical change just before the heart attack happens. There's something that makes you believe you're angry. Just like, you know, if I was
I see the reverse, yes.
if I was feeling that way, if I was angry for some internal reason, that happens sometimes, and I'll go to Tim and I'll say, just to let you know, I'm fuming mad right now and I don't have a reason. It's not you. And he says, okay, I'm going to be over here. You just go in. I'll leave you alone. But if I was to leave the house, everybody on the road would be an idiot who should be getting out of my way. And if I, you know, the bank will be slow and, you know, everybody's wrong because that's how I'm feeling. But I guess on a totally different topic, because I'm a medium, a lot of times when people die, they talk to me like the day after, and they're not happy. Most people are confused. I mean, I have met one person at their funeral who was happy, and she was just in absolute bliss. She had been bedridden for 2 years. Everybody else, even one family member who was who had multiple sclerosis and had been bedridden and in a lot of pain, when at her funeral, she was like, I want out of here, get me out of here. And I was trying to tell her, it's okay, you don't have to stay with your body anymore. And it takes people a few days to really to understand what happened, even if they know. So, but then, you know, people do get it figured out, and I try to coach them through it when I can, and then they go, oh, I mean, I can choose. Yes, you can choose. And then they go, oh, okay. And then they go off and they're all right. But they can get stuck because they get confused. But I found that interesting. I kind of like going to funerals because there's always somebody to talk to there.
By the way, in the research I did for this, there are several different religions which believe that you must allow 3 days before you take any action, because it will take that long for the spirit to figure out and detach or do whatever it needs to in order to move to the other side.
Yeah.
And the loss of the body before then can be handicapping. Thank you. Ellie is next.
In Judaism, you know, when someone passes, and, you know, we hear about it, or someone shares, you know, they passed, or you know, their funeral is such and such. The normal or common response is, may their memory be a blessing. So we don't focus on this here, on the physical body, because it's gone. We focus on the memory and what that memory is for us. I've had to explain a few things like that to people that don't understand, and even those that do. And that's like, you know, they're not here anymore, but their memory is. May their memory be a blessing. And so it takes the focus off of they're gone, the loss, you know, what am I going to do now? Oh, I can think of the memory. I can think of them in that sense, and they're still here.
Thank you. Anybody else with it? Yes, Bob.
I can tell you a story that happened to me. For many decades, I had a cyst in my lower groin, which was like maybe a small walnut or something like that, just there. And I had this for 30 years or something like that, and nothing ever changed with that. It was just there. It was part of my body, which I just, accepted. I've got this thing and whatever. And all of a sudden it became inflamed and more inflamed. And I thought, oh, this is odd. This is really starting to bother me now. And it so happened about a week later, I took a theta healing class, which is very much like Lift, the way the process of it is. And we were being tested for various diseases, what our emotional response is to different diseases. And so the practitioner went through the whole process. I fear brain cancer, or I fear liver cancer, and I was being muscle tested, and I was had a no response to all those things. And then all of a sudden she asked me, I fear ovarian cancer. And I muscle tested yes. I thought, like what? And so she did some probing as to where that fear came from. And she got the information that it was from an aunt that was, 3 generations back in Europe, in Germany, where they lived at that time. And she died very painfully from ovarian cancer. So the practitioner then went through the process of removing that fear. And I said, well, thank you. It's gone. The fear's gone. Tested okay. And then I decided to go, since it was still inflamed, I decided to have it removed, have the cyst removed. And which it was a very simple process. Just maybe took 15 minutes to make it numb and pull it out. And it was gone. And so it's just amazing. I mean, this story is true. And it is just amazing that it's just the whole process turned out this way. The cyst actually knew and became inflamed. It knew that I was going to be taking this theta healing class, and I was going to release that fear. And that's why it became inflamed. It got pissed. So that's my story.
Thank you. I think it was Ellie just sent in chat. The essence of free will is to choose to be a soul, not a body. The battle is to do what your soul wants, not what your body feels like doing. So, yay. So, anybody else with a contribution? Liz?
I just wanted to say thank you, Brian. I think that was very expanding and enlightening. I think over the years I've become less attached to the personality or the physical being leaving, after the many deaths that I've experienced with family members and friends. But the way you explained it made it feel so natural and a part of life. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. And credit to the Divine for telling me to do this one. Divine One, thank you for having brought us together tonight. Thank you for enabling us to share of our personal experiences, of our spiritual growth, of our spiritual experiences. Thank you for enabling us to understand more of the complexity of your existence and our part in it. Help us to grow our faith and our comfort, knowing the connection between this part of your existence and the next plane of existence, where sooner or later we will all transit. Thank you for giving us strength and courage to walk through this life, acting in ways that will make it a better place for all. And thank you for loving us, healing us, giving us good to live in and walk in this life. We say thank you, thank you, thank you, and amen.